I am Ramona, and welcome to Ramona Interviews. You are the executive director of the Rape Crisis Center. Yeah, what's happening?
In some ways, our name in this day and age is almost a misnomer. The Rape Crisis Center of Central Massachusetts. That name was born out of a movement in the late 60s, of course, where actually some female students and faculty, we actually have a very strong connection with Clark University, at that time got together and said, you know, violence on campus is a problem, we need to do something about it, this isn't okay. And so it literally started out as a volunteer grassroots movement in somebody's home where they, you know, connected a phone and started saying, how can we support women who are being assaulted, attacked, raped, you know, abused. And that's sort of how that started. So rape crisis, as part of our name, was critical at that time. It was important to name it for what it was, that rape was a crime, that that was a crisis, and that, you know, there needed to be support for people who had experienced that. What happens today, in some ways, unfortunately, is that there is a lot of assumptions within the community about what a rape crisis center is today, as opposed to what it was in the late 60s. And so while we are part of what we call a movement around ending sexual violence, it's still, there's so much more that we do than just working with an individual who's just been raped. We do a lot, as you and I talked about in my office that day, we do a lot of education in middle schools, high schools, colleges, where we talk about what does prevention mean? What does it mean to be a quiet bystander or a bystander that actually intervenes and could actually prevent some violence from occurring?
And how to do that.
How to do that, and the tools that, you know, are needed for that, as well as sort of community, you know, work, a lot of community involvement, community engagement, that we know that this is a problem that really can't go away without all of us in the community addressing the issue and actually taking a part in that prevention. So, and it can be small and it can be big. So when we think about what brought us together around bullying and how, because that's such a hot topic right now, we know from watching the news and reading the papers of incidences that sort of elevated that to such a level that finally, you know, somebody said we need to do something about it. We're now going to mandate some laws that require that schools have some kind of bullying, you know, intervention, bullying prevention programs. And it's wonderful that that's happening. At the same time, sort of sadly, what we forget is that the problem is much bigger than that. You know, it's not just about bullying, it's about sexual harassment, it's about stalking, it's about sexting, it's about online, you know, issues that we're seeing on the internet with kids, you know, cyberbullying being one of those, obviously. Pornography. There is so much that's going on in addition to sexual assault, rape, you know, all forms of sexual violence. So the problem is big, and you're right. We could talk for many, many shows about this topic, and hopefully we'll have some more shows and maybe pick some specific topics, and hopefully the community watching, you know, your viewers will say, wow, yeah, this was a problem. I know there's a problem because I see it. My kids talk about it. It's in our schools. It's in our neighborhood. And wow, now I'm actually hearing from somebody that there really are things we can do to make a difference. There are many different ways within which someone comes to us. But if they're coming to us for an individual help, they can do that through a 24/7 hotline, 365 days a year, which is private, confidential. They don't even have to use their real name if they don't want to. They do not have to give a phone number if they don't want to. So they can get immediate support, and we would never know who they are.
And what's that telephone number?
And that telephone number is 800-870-5905.
And that doesn't have to be for rape. It could be for
it could be
for anything.
My friend has been hurt and I don't know how to support him or her. It can be I'm just having difficulty sleeping because I'm having some memories triggered from, it might be something that happened to them years ago. There's a variety of reasons. It doesn't have to be, you know, this is not a rape crisis hotline number that people can only call if they've just been raped. This can be, you know, a significant other who wants to help somebody who's a victim or a survivor of some kind of violence, or it can be just somebody that, like I said, has experienced something from many, many years, sometimes decades before.
So it gives you somebody to talk to immediately, which can help you, and then it refers.
And then there are options provided, because our role is not to tell somebody what to do, is to be able to provide support, whatever that support is needed in that moment. And typically hotline calls last around 15 minutes, and it's to a place where the person feels safe again at the end of the call, where they feel like they can whatever time of day or night it is, they can now move on and cope with what is next facing them, whether it's getting up and going to school or being able to go back to sleep or whatever it is. So it really is an intervention of being able to sort of give that caller the opportunity to say, okay, somebody's hearing me, somebody's listening to me, somebody believes me.
Oh yeah.
Now I can say, okay, I'm not crazy, you know, I can actually talk about this. And remember, for somebody even to make the call, that's a huge step. That's a very brave and courageous step for anybody, no matter what their age or gender.
And when is it open?
To make 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
So they can call after school, before they get home, they can use their cell phone.
3 o'clock in the morning,
that's
they
right.
can't sleep.
They can't sleep, they can pick it up and say, look, this has been happening, and there's no pressure.
There's
they're
no
not
judgment,
rushed to do anything.
They're not pressured to do anything, they're not told you have to do this, you have to do that. What we do provide is options like if somebody calls, for example, and says, my girlfriend at school just told me today that her boyfriend raped her, and she's a mess. She doesn't want her parents to know because she figures who's going to believe her. They've been dating for 6 months and they've had consensual sex, and she's told me, and now I have this and I don't know what to do with it. How do I help her? What can I do? That's sort of like an example of where we can say, okay, you need some support from us. We understand this is normal what you're experiencing. It's wonderful that you've reached out and are looking for support. You can offer suggestions to your friend, but ultimately it's her choice.
Sure, of course.
You know, so all these things. So we can say that there are different things available to her. We can talk, we make referrals all the time.
Good.
Sometimes somebody needs more than we can provide. Sometimes somebody actually says, I want to come in for counseling. We do provide one-on-one counseling. We provide group counseling. Typically, group counseling happens after somebody's already had a certain amount of time in individual counseling and they feel ready to do group counseling. So that's on someone who's actually either a significant other or an actual survivor of some kind of trauma that's related to sexual assault, sexual violence, that we can provide those critical services, those direct services to help that individual or that family.
Touch with your organization to have, you know, you come into the school and talk about this broad base. I mean, it's not just about rape.
No, and very often with schools, that's not the language we even use. There are schools that don't want us to go in and talk about rape or use the word rape. We go and we talk about healthy relationships. We talk about, you know, respect. We talk about certainly bullying and harassment, but depending on the age level, you know, it's not always appropriate for us to go and talk about rape. But there are ways that we can talk about violence in general that allows us an opportunity to really provide some education that really does change attitudes in kids. And that's the best that you can hope for. Because it's first of all, it's a long-term solution. You're not going to fix everything overnight. You're not going to suddenly change somebody's mind overnight or somebody's attitude overnight or belief overnight.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Ramona, so much. I think one thing to leave with the viewers is that we change the world one person at a time. And we start with ourselves, and we can certainly do more with our kids.
Oh, absolutely.
So, thank you.
Thank you
for this.
Oh, thank you. I am Ramona, and you've been watching Ramona Interviews. Have a wonderful week.